Hi there, it's Karen from Vintage Style Journals. Just going to show you a very quick video on just going to make up some little cards just to go inside some of my journals. So I thought I'd make a bit of a mass production here. So what I've done is I've actually got these Project Life cards here, and I've got that size and a larger size. I'm just going to make some funky little journal cards with a bit of a mixed media, just so that I can, pop them in my journals that I have for sale in my Etsy store. So what I've done so far is I've used a little spray bottle with some gold paint watered down, just so that I could spray a bit of a background here. And I've got my trusty ugly brush that has been really well worn for many years. It's called a fan, obviously. It's shaped like a fan. What I've done is I've got a bit of a watery mix here of I don't even know how to describe the colour. It's like a chocolatey mauvey sort of colour. So I'm just going to use my brush and flick some extra colour on the background. The reason why I'm doing this is I don't want to overdo it. But I do want to use a bit of a background for the texture that I'm going to do on top. I've got some texture paste that I use, the Jo Sonia brand. There's also another Atelier brand modelling compound that you can use. There's many of them on the market. I just prefer those particular types of brands because they're pretty tried and true, and I know the result I'm going to get with them. So here I'm just really flicking a few spots on these cards just to doody-dar them a little bit prior to putting the texture on the background. It doesn't have to be uniform, obviously. It's just really giving them an interesting background. A lot of this is going to probably be covered by the stencil, and because I'm a bit of a rose fanatic, I'm going to be using a mini rose stencil that I have here. I don't have many stencils, but this is the one that I'll be using today. You could probably use any one that you want to use if you're going to have a go at this. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that to dry. It'll probably take about 5 minutes or so to dry. Okay, so what I'm doing is I've got the Atelier brand here. I'm just going to be using that one for the moment. It's a modelling compound, so it'll give you a little bit of texture. And what I've done is I've just placed some in a bit of a palette here at the side. I've put a little bit of rose pink in there, and I'm just going to give it a bit of a mix around. A little bit more tricky than I thought it would be. It's quite thick, and I'm trying to mix it with my palette knife here. I probably should be mixing it with something else. But I love this colour, as I paint a lot of my roses with this particular colour. But any of the modelling compounds or texture pastes that you have, whether they're transparent or translucent rather, or whether they're opaque, you can actually use them and place any colour paint in with them to get the colour that you like. And this is pretty much the colour that I like, because I know it's, probably screams at some of you, but I just thought I would make a colour that's rosy, because what I'm going to do when the texture paste is wet, I'm going to be putting some what do they call that stuff? I think it's embossing powder. I'm going to be putting some of that over the top of it, and the one that I'm using is going to be a clear one, so when I heat it with my heat gun, it's actually going to come up a little bit as far as giving you a beautiful texture on the top side of it, instead of just having a oh dear, I made a bit of a mess there. Just better wipe that off on my painted desk. Okay. It'll make it, just give it a beautiful, beautiful sheen over the top of it. So I'm just going to place the stencil here, and I'm going to go where the flower is, if I can see it with the shine on. It's a little bit shiny with that light. I'll just see if I can move that away so we can get a better look at it without the light over it, making a problem for it. I'm just going to grab my clear, super fine. This is what I'm putting over top of it. I don't even know what brand it is, but it's just a super fine embossing powder that's actually clear. It is actually a Ranger model, so you can get lots of different brands. You don't have to use any particular brand at all, but I'm just going to place that where the flower is. I'm just going to put the texture down over top there. The reason that I'm using the paint in the texture today is because I pretty much don't have a lot of embossing powders, and you might have a whole pile of them that you can use different colours. So I'm just popping that down over here. I'm going to use the pink on all of the stencils that I do. I'm going to use this type of pink. I might go in and recolour it a little bit just to add some interest. I don't want to grab the leaf area there. I want to try and put some green or browny green in there in a minute. But I'm just really trying to focus on the flower at least. Not as easy as I thought, but just trying to, I suppose, be patient. And I'm using the palette knife because I find it easier to spread the texture paste. It doesn't have to be too super textured to make it look nice. It can still look quite lovely, even if it's almost flat to the surface. But when you're using the texture paste, what you don't want to do is dig into it. You just want to scrape it over the top so that you can see the stencil coming through it, because that'll give you enough texture without being over the top. But yeah, it'll just add some lovely interest to your project. So I'm trying not to get where I'm going to put the stems. So we'll just see what happens here. I'll pull this one up in a minute. I didn't mix the green up yet, so I might do all the pink and then I'll come back and do the greens so that I'm not wasting your time. So what I'm going to do now, I've got my rose colour here, but what I want to do is I want to do the green for the stems and the leaves. So I'm just going to pop a tiny little bit of green on there. This is a pine green. I'm going to grab some of the rose pink and I'm going to mix it with the pine green. I know it sounds really crazy, but what this will do, having both colours together, when I put the green on here for the leaf, it won't scream. It'll actually blend in well. It's looking like a bit of a brown at the moment. That's because of the pink hue that's in there. I might need to put some more pine green in with it. And I'm using the Jo Sonja brand. These paints I've had for yonks. I used to teach for Jo Sonja, and I've just kept all these paints, and you know what, they are almost hundreds of years old. No, that's an exaggeration. It's but you'll see the ones in the shops now have got a totally new label and they look really quite snazzy. But these are in my kit from many years ago, and you know, some of them I've had for more than 20 years and they're still wonderfully perfect for use. There's no problem whatsoever with them. So instead of mixing it with a white modelling paste rather, I've actually gone in with the pink. So I've got a really nice shade of a khaki kind of green there, which is going to be perfect for use here with the flower that I'm doing. You're probably thinking to yourself, this woman's a little bit mad because it's not going to be looking very nice at all. But I can tell you it will look quite lovely once it's finished. And I know it seems very fiddly. I don't want to get that little section there. I'm just trying to get the leaf. Doesn't matter if it goes over. Obviously, it's not going to be absolutely perfect. It's going to be funky, but it's going to be still gorgeous. And we're going to finish it off very quickly in a minute. And put the embossing paste straight on, the embossing powder, I'm just trying to flatten that out a bit, messing up my table here, but that'll wipe off in a tick. I'll just put the green up the top here. The reason why I'm colouring the modelling paste is because, as I said before, I don't have many colours as far as the embossing powders go. I've just got a few that I've picked out over years just for Christmas things, Christmas cards and other little bits and pieces. So that's why I'm colouring the paste, so that when I put the clear modelling paste, I keep saying modelling paste, I'm going nuts, obviously. When I put the clear embossing powder over top of it, it's going to give it a really gorgeous sheen. So I'll just flatten that out a little bit. I might put just a touch of green here just because I can. I'll lift that up and so you can see it. With this stencil, it just washes out in water. They're made for water wash up. And we'll just pull that off. That's the actual outcome of the stencil. I'll put that there and I'll put it in water shortly. They really do come off quite easily in water. Just want to wipe that paste off my table there. I'll use a baby wipe in a minute. That'll get most things off. I'm just going to put this down on some baking paper just so that I can put the, while the paste is still wet, this needs to go on. So I'm just going to put it over the top, completely over the top. And it'll stick because the paste is still wet. If the paste was dry, it won't stick very well at all. And you'd need to put some kind of Versamark or just something that's a little bit oil-based over top just so that it can stick. So I'm using a lot there, but I'm just going to tip it off into the bottom there, and try not to be too rough and flick the card because you'll lose a lot of your embossing powder if you do that. I'm just going to gently tap it and wait for this to dry, and then I'm going to heat it, and it's going to be fantastic. You're going to see the gorgeous sheen because of this clear clear embossing powder, the Ranger one. So once that's all dry, I'm going to heat it with my heat gun, and see what happens. Alrighty, so I'm hoping that this is dry, and just going to grab my trusty little heat gun and have a bit of a go at it and see what we can come up with. This is just a no-brand type heat gun that I picked up, I'm not sure where, but the other thing I wanted to mention too is that before I start making a noise with the heat gun, is that sometimes when you put paint in with the texture paste or the modelling compound, it can dry a lot quicker than it would just on its own. Just a bit of a tip. So I'm just going to have a go at this and see what we can come up with. I'm going to put the heat gun on low and just start. So you may not hear my voice over the heat gun, so we'll just see how we go. I'm putting it on low just so that I don't blow all the embossing powder off the texture paste itself. I don't think I'll be able to do that necessarily, but just in case, because when I got rid of most of the embossing powder off it, I thought, well, maybe I just didn't leave enough on. But just doing it slowly, you can see that some of the shiny parts where it's starting to shine up a bit. Oh, it's giving it quite a nice funky funky look about it. Moving the heat gun a little bit, I think probably gets it going a little bit quicker. But yeah, I'm just using it on low. You can try it on high, but I think on low you're not likely to blow all that embossing powder off. So I'm happy with the way that's starting to look. You'll see it's starting to shine a little bit. It's gone darker. I'll just keep moving it over this way a bit. Don't want to burn my fingers. You see it is bubbling up a little bit, so the texture paste may not be thoroughly dry. As I mentioned before, it will bubble up if the texture paste is not dry underneath. I don't mind that look. Okay, so I think it's all done on the top there. Just going to turn this off and just turn it around a little bit. Got my heat gun hooked up too far away from me at the moment, but you can see the difference between the part that has been heated and the part that hasn't. It's still matte. What I'm going to do after this, when this cools down, I'm going to probably try and put a little bit of colour in the background. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I think I'll leave that for the other white one that I did before. So we'll just keep going on this one until it's finished, and then I'm going to pick up the one with the Crackle paste on it and see what happens with that one. Crackle paste probably isn't dry yet, so you might not be able to notice it until it's well and truly dry. But you can see as I'm going over this with the heat gun, it's starting to have a bit of shine to it. It must be dry, it's not bubbling up too much at all. Well, that's good. Yeah, so if you're going to use the white texture paste or modelling compound, then that's perfectly fine, because it will you'll be able to put your own colours over it like I did with the next one that I'm going to show you. Okay, so here's the outcome of the little rose embossed roses stencils that I did. And what I've done, I wasn't overly fussed about just the plain pink, although I like it. I suppose wanted a little bit more detail. So what I've decided to do is to actually darken the background. I've used some paint just to gather this colour here, and then I've used a Versamark Versamarker. So what I did is I'll just do it on this one here. On this one you've got the brush, and you've got the pen kind of thing. I use the brush part to just open it up, and these are pretty simple type of pens. They've probably just got glycerine in them, and that's what makes them work for this type of thing. But I'm just going to put my glasses on and just go around the top part, because where I want the pink to be, or the darker tone here, I'm just going to pop the Versamarker over top of that, and you can see that that's quite a textured sort of background there because of the texture paste underneath the actual embossing powder. So we'll just pretty much just paint the area that I want it to be changed a little bit. Just chose to do the top part in all the darker colour, and then I'm going to paint just the bottom part, just pop a line on each of the bottom parts here, just so that it will kind of imitate the base petal of the roses, you know, just at the base. The last ones you'll be doing it on the inside instead of the base. You'll be doing it on what appears the top of it, so just along there. And you have a little bit of time before this pen dries, so I think just all the top there again. I actually broke my stencil. I'm not really great with stencils, so yeah, I could probably still use it. I'll probably glue it, but I got a bit crazy trying to get the paint off it, or the actual texture paste last night, and just tore into it. So I probably won't be using that one quite as regularly. So what I'm going to do, I'll just move some paper over. This is just baking paper, just something to pour the embossing powder over. So I'll just pour. I usually like to just cover the whole thing. Doesn't matter if it gets over the other parts, because it's only really going to touch the parts on here that are wet. I'll try and get some back in, but might not be able to get it all back in. Okay, and I'll leave that until later to fix that part up. Hopefully I won't tip it over while I'm mucking around with my gun here, my little trusty heat gun. So I'm just going to, you can see that it's just stuck to the place where I put the pen. I'm just going to put it on low and just heat that section up again. Just add a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of depth to the flower. See that I'm going out of screen there, sorry about that. I usually like to hold it up. I don't like to do it just on the table like that. So just hold it up, move the gum a little bit if you need to. You'll see it change colour, obviously. Once it heats up, it'll be more shiny. This is quite matte once it first goes on. It just takes a bit for the heat gun to heat up. You can see it's happening already to some parts of it. It's funny because I've got it aimed at the top here, and at the bottom is the part that's actually working best, so the transferred air, I suppose, is going to that section. Maybe if I pull it over a bit. And it's starting to colour up nicely. These are just going to be little journal cards that I'm going to pop in my journals that I create. I have to get back to creating a few more. Most of the ones that I've done so far have sold, so I'm a little bit sparse in my shop as far as my journals go. I just need to get a few more on the way. It's just getting the time for these things, because I put many hours into it, and just like to make sure that they're wonderful before I send them out. So there you go. It's just sort of changed it a little bit, given it a little bit of, I don't know, a bit of depth, I suppose. And I'll probably colour that one up a little bit as I have